Hi there. Real quick before we jump into the episode. If you enjoy this episode or any of the other episodes, be sure to give us a follow or subscribe. It would also be great if you shared it with a friend, or better yet, left a review so others can know how awesome it is. Thanks so much. And now, the episode.
Hey there, Press Starters, and welcome to the Press Start Leadership Podcast, the podcast about game-changing leadership, teaching you how to get the most out of your product and development team and become the leader you were meant to be. Leadership coaching and training for the international game industry professional. Now, let me introduce you to your host, the man, the myth, the legend, Christopher Mifsud.
Welcome back to another amazing episode of the Press Start Leadership Podcast, Conversations with Christopher. On this week's episode, we have a longtime friend and colleague, writer, editor, designer in the game industry, Brandes Stoddard. Now, let me introduce you to Brandes Stoddard.
Hi, everybody. I'm very pleased to be here today.
Excellent. Thanks, Brandes. So, as I said in the introduction, you're a longtime friend and colleague of mine. We've known each other for a long time. We've gamed for a very long time. We worked together on a couple projects. But I know who you are. But not everyone here is going to know who you are. So I always like to ask my guests, what's your origin story? What is the origin of Brandes?
So, when the planet of Dungeons and Dragons was exploding in a distant galaxy, I was jettisoned by people who no longer thought I had any future there, and landed on this planet, raised by a mild-mannered and unassuming state court judge and his wife, a teacher, in Marietta, Georgia.
Man, they had no idea, did they?
Some portions of this are true. That'll be left to the audience to determine. So I grew up in Marietta, Georgia, and I got into playing video games on the Apple IIgs, and then into tabletop games in 1992 or so, thanks to some like choose your own adventure style books with stats that TSR released in those days.
Okay, so it wasn't the Steve Jackson sorcery ones, because
right, those are I think a little better known, but I don't think that any of the ones I was looking at were those. I'd have to dig them all up to tell you who made all of them.
Okay.
But I had it in my head, because I was 11, that
Sure.
I would somehow be able to backform a real tabletop game from these. And so I was trying to design a tabletop game before having played a tabletop game.
Amazing.
This did not, work. But it was still an interesting experience. Like ultimately, I was trying to make something that you could recognize as Dragon Quest I in tabletop form. Because that was my experience of what a role-playing game was.
Sure, because
right?
you were so you were coming from the side of role-playing games, video game first, then role-playing game second. I gotcha. Yeah, mine was slightly different experience, but I get where you're coming from.
Yeah. And so in '93, I got into Dungeons and Dragons, AD&D Second Edition, and stuck with that. Though I did branch out into a few other tabletop games. It was very self-taught, and so I didn't have other people to introduce me to games they loved. Like this is a time period in which a lot of my peers were getting into Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, or the D6 Star Wars, or whatever you got, and I didn't find those, and so I don't have those experiences that you and a lot of our other friends have from that time.
Yeah, actually, then those were my core games. Like I did
Yeah.
D&D, but the D6 Star Wars, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, inherently, sadly, riffs. But like
Right.
those
Yep.
fantastical worlds were, and Shadowrun even. All right,
Yep. Mhm.
those are the ones I was picking up. But cursory on the outline, because I wasn't doing that. The only game that because D&D wasn't my lifeblood. The only one that I was really looking for was Dark Sun. And I remember waiting for
Oh,
Dark
yeah.
Sun because it kept getting delayed like a million times. But I kept seeing that poster in the game shop and kept going, "When's that game coming out?" And then asking because as an annoying teenager to the clerks
Oh,
there, they'd
yeah.
be like, "Go
Oh,
away,
yeah.
kid." And I was like, "But Dark Sun, man, this poster's been up for like 2 years now. When's this freaking game coming out?" And they're just like, "Go away." I'm like, "All right, well, I'll keep playing Rifts or whatever I was playing then." Elf Quest the RPG. I think I picked up a copy of that during that. I'm not ashamed. That was a cool game.
So I managed to make friends with one of the guys at the local Walden Books who it was the guy in the store who had the knowledge of their like role playing stock, and so like this seems weird now. It's kind of nonsense now, but it was okay for me to just call up the store, ask for him, and ask what was new in D&D.
Oh
And
no, but
because
yeah.
because it was very what even is the internet,
Mm-hmm.
um, this was a reasonable way to find out what was going on in like product. And so like I got into Birthright that way, and I
Mm-hmm.
got into Forgotten Realms that way. Um, I wish I'd gotten into Dark Sun, but I just missed the boat on that one. I wish I got into Planescape. Like at this
Oh
point,
man,
I
yeah.
wish I had all of the
Spelljammer.
original box sets for Planescape and Spelljammer,
Yeah.
because let me tell you, the resale of the Planescape box sets is bananas.
Well, fair enough. Yeah, there's that.
Um, but yeah, like it was a very heady time for setting design, and a very strange, maybe stagnated time for rules design in D&D. Um, Oddly, I think those two like fed each other really in a positive way. Like the rules being pretty stagnant meant that they were pouring a lot of creative energy into settings.
True, and that's why
And
we got
they
so
were
many bombastic settings
yeah,
back then. But
right, absolutely. And also they were much more comfortable then than they have been ever since with this setting has its custom rules that you don't use anywhere else.
true, because now, now it has to be as flexible as possible, right? Because
Yep.
you want
I mean,
everyone to be able to.
you
Yeah.
think about maybe the like bloodline and lineage rules of Birthright at one extreme, and the like weapon composition rules of Dark Sun at the other, and like those have no business in a campaign that's even like 2 degrees of separation from each other. Right?
Yeah.
They're such different ideas. Um, anyway,
But you wanted
um,
to.
well, if that's your life, man.
Well, and that's why we had riffs. So yeah.
Um, so from there, I was staying involved in D&D through third edition.
Mhm.
I played a lot in college. Um, then got into doing some freelance editing for a third-party material with uh, Dawning Star Operation Quick Launch for our friend Lee Hammock.
Mhm.
Um, and because of that work, Lee hired me to work at Icarus Studios in 2006,
Mhm.
which relocated me to North Carolina. Um, and you and I had met before then, but I think that's where we really got to know each other a lot better.
Sure. Yeah, that's
Um,
where there were regular gaming sessions and work
yeah,
sessions, and more work
and
sessions probably than gaming sessions, though we wanted it
yeah,
the other way around. But
yeah. Well, and we also that is also a major time when my experience of tabletop games really diversified widely,
yeah. Mhm.
because we were playing Pendragon. You were running Earthdawn. There was a Song of Ice and Fire campaign. You ran some Vampire. Just everything under the sun was, getting played after hours in the office, and it was great. It was a really, wonderful, creative hothouse. That you know, I think everyone needs at least once in their lives if they're going to be in the gaming industry. It doesn't have to be tabletop games, but you need to have that kind of time where you can just completely sink into it, right?
Yeah. We played
because
a
I was
lot
also
of tabletop stuff too. Board game stuff, other things
Yep. Well, and like we had something like 6 or 8 tabletop games going in every 2-week cycle, and then every night that I wasn't playing a tabletop game, I was raiding. It was just completely insane because World of Warcraft was at its worldwide dominance peak right then, and so it was a very heady time. And then there were a bunch of shakeups with Icarus Studios. I went over to Viseron for a while. That didn't work out. I was fortunate enough to come back to Icarus Studios for a few years, and they'd gone from an MMO studio to a mobile game studio, as you know. And that was still an interesting and creative time. But things had really changed because the studio is so much smaller, and so many of our friends had scattered to the 4 winds. Just that's how things go. Then in 2012, Wizards of the Coast announced D&D Next as the public playtest phase of 5th edition.
Oh wow, 2012. Okay.
Yeah. So they had 2 solid years of public playtest, and so my gaming groups were deeply involved in that, and like updating characters with every new packet release, and then that campaign just continued with more character updates right into 5th, and yeah, that's been very much my gaming experience. Like, 5th edition has become unbelievably dominant in the tabletop space. Like, D&D has always been, the 800-pound gorilla in the room.
Sure.
Well, I guess it's now the 8,000-pound gorilla. It's not the only thing going, not by a long shot, but it's never been bigger than it is now. It's just insane how much streaming and actual plays, and I mean the pandemic driving people to virtual tabletop spaces has increased its fan base.
Definitely, it's the known entity for sure.
Absolutely.
Like it was always a known entity, but it's like definitely the known entity. I think the like you could take it to the prevalence of tabletop now is probably where the popularity of wrestling was in the early 90s. Where like the like the Monday Night Wars and stuff like that. It's not, I mean, it's popular with some folks, but not as popular as it was back then. I think that's the level. It's sort of like what you're talking about is like tabletop is now a thing, right? And it's not like, I mean, it's a thing that's more commonly accepted. It's a thing that there's a lot more variety there. There's it's like Baskin Robbins. There's a flavor for everyone. And
it's hard to look back now and see how the Satanic Panic happened. Like, that just seems very odd.
Well,
I mean, maybe
I could look around and still see where the Satanic Panic came from, but I mean,
fair enough.
Sure.
I mean, maybe not you with your ZZ Top beard there, but
it's true. It's true. It's my Dumbledore beard now. I can do the double, but
like acceptance has gotten to a place in the States, even here in the buckle of the Bible Belt, where Walmart and Target carry Dungeons and Dragons. No one bats an eye. It's not a topic of conversation.
It's true. It's true. And like, again, like the varieties out there, there's bespoke right? I mean, you can get like custom and like high end grade like D&D nowadays,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like just now launched with Dungeons and Dragons just relaunched something with Ravenloft, right?
Yep. They've brought the classic Ravenloft setting into fifth edition with Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft. That's a really big deal. They've greatly diversified the freelance writers they're bringing in for projects, um, and so the cultural breadth of Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft is unlike anything that the game has seen before. Um,
Hmm.
I mean, there are uh, people from India telling horror stories about an Indian culture, an Indian domain of dread.
That's cool.
Just as an
Very cool,
example,
actually. Yeah,
similar for Mesoamerica.
yeah.
It's just it's a really beautiful time.
That is really nice. And on top of that, there's people that are selling like $500, $399 boxes sets
Yeah,
for
yeah. So you have Beadle and Grimm's
if you just want.
doing like player handouts to an incredible level of quality and fidelity.
Yeah,
So
it's nice.
they have sets that run from, as you're saying, 300 to 500 or whatever. I don't
Yeah.
price them. I can't afford them. It's cool.
I think we discussed the price on another conversation with Christopher with another guest.
Mhm.
I just keep bringing it up because it still blows my mind because I
Yeah,
remember like the dice I could get were blue or red or green or maybe translucent slightly, but now there's like metal and gold and like real gold and real diamond.
mhm.
If you want it, you can get it. And it's
Yep.
there for you. There's custom tables for your family of gamers so that you can
Yeah.
all eat at your table, then open it up and play all your tabletop games and not lose your spot in the game that you were playing. Because why not?
Yeah, like the thing is, you don't need to sell very many to make the project worthwhile. So
Yeah, because you got Kickstarter now. You didn't have that back in the
that too.
day. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh man, what Kickstarter has done for
Made
tabletop
my
gaming in particular is
oh,
wild.
and made my wallet lighter. That's for
Oh
sure too.
boy.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Yeah. I sure do like me some Kickstarter these days though.
Well, like Kickstarter has been a huge part of my career as a freelance writer. Um,
Yeah, talk about that a little
because
bit. Yeah.
yeah, so um, let's see. So in at the very end of 2014, Fifth Ed had just come out. So I'd been writing my blog for years, and then I got asked
A
to come write
blog, you
for
say? Hold on, what's
a
that?
blog. I do say, well, it's where you go on the web and write about things.
No, but what's your blog?
My blog is brandesstoddard.com. I'm a helper, Chris.
Yeah. So never mind. That's perfectly fine. You're not the first. You're not the last. It's all good. All right.
So brandesstoddard.com is my blog. At the time, I was writing on Blogspot. Now it's on WordPress, thanks to the help of our very dear friend Wendy Holler. And so I'd been writing about D&D all through D&D Next, and had moved to talking about 5e, among other gaming topics that the blog covers. And so there was a new gaming website that a guy named Sean Ellsworth and Mike Long had just started up called tribality.com. And they asked me to come write for them because they always need more writers. That's how it is. You got to feed the beast. The beast loves content. And so I started writing for them,
The
doing
beast being D&D players.
pretty much
Yeah. Okay.
the audience, the blog, whichever you want to see as the all-devouring force in your life.
Sure.
So right. I started writing the history of the classes for them, and after we've been working together on this for several years, Sean Ellsworth decided that he wanted to try to release his homebrew setting, the Seas of Odari.
Oh, okay.
through the 5e Open Gaming License. And so we started a Kickstarter for that. Our initial ask was 10,000 Canadian, which it's sort of very middle of the road for first Kickstarter asks. It's I think it was at the time was just under 8,000 US, and we wound up getting 52.5 Canadian, which is a really nice set of stretch goals. And so I was doing writing and editing and design and development for that book, along with a bunch of other friends. Colin was already writing for our friend Colin McLaughlin, I should say, was already writing for Tribality at the time. We also recruited other folks that Sean knew, other folks that I knew, and we just had a really great creative team for that project. Then when that was done, it was at the end of Seas of Odari, our final stretch goal. We committed to releasing Under the Seas of Odari, which was an aquatic supplement. Originally, it was going to be just a PDF. We kept writing.
Yeah, of course. That's what writers do, hopefully.
So now it's been its own new Kickstarter that was even more successful than the first one.
That's awesome.
Yep. Feel really good about it. And so that's going to be its own hardback release. And so we're in the middle of that now. And again, here I'm writer, editor, designer, developer, kind of wearing whichever hats any given piece of text needs from me. But it's still very much Sean's baby, and we just have most of the same creative team back, and we're working our way through it. And then I've also worked as a developer for Kobold Press on their recent Southlands Kickstarter. So, let's see, I wrote for the Rain Second Edition. The setting book that goes with Rain Second Edition, Rain Realities, in which my wife Rabbit Stoddard and I wrote the Gifts of Starlight, Gifts of Stone setting. It's another way that Kickstarter has been very good to us. Just all kinds of different Kickstarter projects, because it's so easy to add a stretch goal where you get, a freelance writer or two to commit to somewhere between 2,000 and 10,000 words, and the dollar total of the stretch goal is going to pay there per word. So I guess we're good. Excuse me, I need to cough. I'm going to mute myself.
Yeah. Those listening missed out on that incredible cough, but it was quite a cough. But if you're watching the YouTube version of this, you still get to catch it, so it's all right.
A truly heroic cough, I'm sure.
It was heroic. It was. But that's awesome, and it's great that Kickstarter. I mean, that's the thing, right? We're just saying Kickstarter gives a lot of opportunities to folks to who aren't maybe in the mainstream, working with WotC and doing the work there. But you recently got to do something with WotC too, right?
I did. In January of 2020, when everyone had heard about COVID-19 but didn't yet know really that it was going to be, our lives from here on out. I was contacted by Christopher Perkins to potentially write on something that was at the time called Project Microwave, and I got to write an adventure for Wizards of the Coast that was published in Candlekeep Mysteries.
Very cool.
So
and that just came out like a month or so ago, I guess, right?
That came out in March, so 2 months ago.
Yeah. Okay. Very cool. Excellent.
And so that was super exciting. Definitely one of the highest profile projects I've ever worked on as a freelancer. and just a real delight. But my work on that ended in about June of 2020. So then all those intervening months were just, I'm sure this is fine.
We're just waiting for life to get back to normal so that things could kind of move along, right? Yeah, sure. So we're going to take a slight swivel to the right for a moment and talk about something a little different, but one of the, not different here. Here we talk about it all the time, and it's a common topic is leadership. So I'm always curious to find out from all my different guests, how do you define good leadership? Right? We all know what poor leadership is, and we've all had plenty of stories that explain that. But what's good leadership? How does one be a good leader?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the core is figuring out the way that a person most wants to contribute to a project, and both help them achieve what they want to contribute and make that part of what everyone else is able to contribute as much as possible. It's certainly feasible that I want to contribute way more of this than the project needs. Well,
sure.
Sorry, friend. We'll give you as much space to work on that as we can, but we just don't have room for a 500,000 word lore document to go in this game. Not speaking from personal experience. Anyway.
No, but I think that's great. I think it's that's an awesome example, right? It's learning what your team wants to do and finding ways to incorporate that into the projects and the work that you have, right? So if you know somebody wants more opportunities to write a certain thing or work on a certain thing, then when those opportunities come available, making sure you mark those people for doing that. Or if someone wants an opportunity to grow into leadership or whatever, right? Finding moments where they can lead small projects and have an effect and kind of get that experience, but they won't necessarily damage the project or anything else by like being too much for them, right? Yeah. So it gives them the room to grow and expand and pick up new skills while still contributing to the overall goal of the business and everything. I think that's a perfect way that you have it there.
So that I think is like in my head, the terms are going to be wrong because I'm not in management spaces, but sure. I think of that as the core of bottom-up leadership. That's sort of the arrow pointing upward. The core of arrow pointing downward leadership is protecting your people from things that other groups or higher ups want that aren't reasonable.
Of course, right? To be that buffer. Yeah. No, it's a give and take there in leadership, and I think there's definitely a place for it, and I think it happens in project leadership more than anything else, right? Where it's very good that you communicate as a leader, leading a team, what your team is capable of and what they want to do, or think they should do, right? So because they're bringing their expertise, like you said, from the bottom, and you're communicating that upwards, and then the feedback that you get from above, making sure that it's digested in a way that it can go to your team and be productive and conducive to actually getting projects done and not shattering their dreams and hopes and so forth, and or derailing them because it's such an earth-shaking an idea that it is incomprehensible to the team why anybody would think that, but you as the manager have to distill that into truth that is viable. Or
and thinking,
help them.
Thinking back to another of our shared experiences, there's also a flavor of leadership that is not about being a leader for your specific team, but being a maximally effective member of a larger team that it is still a leadership task, which is like shaking the tree enough to make other people who are unwilling to do their work do their work.
Well, yeah, that one's tough. It's like a motivator,
it is tough.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah.
It's really tough, and I'm not really talking about like when a member of your team, someone is clearly, a direct part of your hierarchy isn't willing to do the work, but more there's this guy over in this other department who is giving me a lot of, no, that's impossible. Well, it's not impossible. You're just not excited enough about it to do the stuff.
Sure. Yeah, that's a cross-functional team motivation, finding a way to communicate to the other team or find the wiggle through the not focus on stuff to get that stuff going. Yeah. But that is the goal there, right? They're helping out ultimately they're helping out the overall company and objectives of the teams and everybody there and trying to make everyone happy in that situation.
Yeah. And reminding everyone involved that, no, we all share the same goal of wanting the end product to be as wonderful and successful as possible.
Yeah,
is the core of it, right? Just it's easy for people to kind of stagnate.
Sure, and it's easy for people to say no in the beginning. First thing to do is say no. The guy I'm used to, they say no. They don't have to hear about it, or they get a little bit of a stall before they have to hear about it again, right?
Yep.
And but no, it's very true, and it is an important part of leadership to get that going in there. So another important question, not leadership related, but a favorite subject of mine is donuts. What is your favorite donut?
I will destroy some Boston creams.
Boy, howdy, so would I. Yeah. Boston creams are fab and tabulous. Not gonna lie on that one either. I want to circle back actually to, like, you mentioned something that got you when you got started in tribality back in the day, and it was the history of the classes. And I'm glad that you brought that up, because that was a very fun read, and I highly recommend anybody watching and listening to this that they actually go back and check it out, because if you've only experienced 5th edition, and you experience the classes there, don't get me wrong, 5th edition is an excellent edition, and obviously it took many journeys and many changes to get to the point where we are now with the classes. But the classes have gone through many different iterations. Some not so much. Some have pretty much been pretty steady, but some had some crazy ups and downs and takes on themselves over Ranger, over the years. And I think you did an excellent job, and it was something fascinating to me, because I won't lie, I tend to play the same classes most of the time nowadays. And over the years, no matter what the edition was. In fact, the only reason I play something different is because they added something, I think would be it, right? Like Warlord, when they added that became my new fave for a while there, until they kind of got rid of it, and then whatever. So be it.
Still a sore subject on the Twitters. Be very careful bringing this up on the Twitters.
Well, it's an understandable sore subject, because anyway. But you did an excellent job. Just maybe talk about that. Like, what got you started on doing that, and maybe talk a little bit more in depth than I just kind of highlighted it there. Of what you did and what got you going on that, because it's pretty cool. It's an undertaking that only someone who is truly devoted to Dungeons and Dragons, coming from the planet of D&D, and being a wayward member of that society, who would study its ancient lores and teachings and then put them together into something that's a little bit more digestible for the new up and coming, and for those who wish also from the planet of D&D to nostalgia a little bit about.
Well, I mean, the main drive here is that I really love crumbling scrolls. Just if a scroll is crumbling as I unfurl it to read the ancient texts, it really adds something. But no, what happened was, during sort of the span of D&D Next. So this is before I'm writing for Tribality. I'm just writing my own blog. I started really digging into, okay, so this Ranger thing, they're doing stuff with the Ranger. What in God's name are they doing? And and the Ranger has this identity crisis that goes all the way back.
It does. It was the first class I ever played, though.
Well,
that's not true. I think the second class I ever played, but yeah.
So I wrote this series of 3 articles in my blog that were like just a proto form of history of the classes. I was talking about, okay, so this class gets its start in one of the earliest like magazine articles from Tactical Studies Rules, the Strategic Review, their magazine, right? And
so this is before Dragon and Dungeon Magazine and all that.
Right. It's still 1975, right?
I wasn't even born yet. That's amazing.
Same. And so it's this incredibly old thing. It's been in D&D since as near the beginning as you can mark. Like it comes into the game at about the same time as the Thief.
Wow.
Right?
Okay. Yeah.
But you still see people who argue that it doesn't have a place in D&D. So a lot of that has to do with this identity crisis, and like calling it a Ranger in its earliest edition is a very strange move, unless you like want to take this very skewed view on who Aragorn is. And it's a very strange thing.
Because straight up is Aragorn, right? I mean, that was where it's coming from.
Right. Its initial concept is clearly supposed to be Aragorn. And like even then it's weird because they are both arcane and divine casters. They're both, magic user and cleric casters at a certain level. Which, what now? How is Aragorn doing that? Sure. Whatever.
I took it for favored enemy, so I could have a displacer beast, which was the stupidest choice ever back then. But
that all comes much later, right?
Does it?
So it does, because I'm still talking about original D&D.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
Where they can do all of this while wearing plate armor, but they can't have many possessions. It's a whole thing. So there are no stealth rules. There's no hiding rules at this point in the game, so they aren't sneaky. That's not a thing. And anyway, it goes forward edition over edition, kind of bouncing all over the place in how much it is or isn't getting closer to what we have now. Second edition is where it really picks up the preference for 2-weapon fighting.
That's it. Yeah. And like lighter armor, right?
Right. And the really curious thing about it is that according to the designers of second edition, it doesn't have anything in the world to do with Drizzt Do'Urden. It is coincidence. Drizzt is doing all of this 2-weapon fighting because that is a feature of Drow at the time.
Yeah.
Not because it's supposed to be a Ranger thing. And they weren't trying to support as a Drizzt thing. They just thought Rangers should fight with 2 weapons. Sure. And so they're sort of the 2-weapon or bows class.
I remember that. Yeah.
And they become sneaky because they get thief skills. This continues on into third.
The hybrid class. Hybrid. Right?
They're a hybrid class.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that often will mean sort of okay at 2 things, not great at either of them. That's always a danger with anything that's trying to be a hybrid. They get spellcasting starting at 8th level, so late enough that most players don't ever experience it. They mostly experience the Ranger as a non-casting class. This continues to be a major point of contention in online conversations. Should Rangers be spellcasting as a core part of their game loop? Well, D&D has firmly said yes. 4th edition is the only edition of the game in which Rangers are not spellcasters by 8th or 9th level. And sometimes quite a bit earlier. In 5th, they get spells by 2nd level. And no matter how much people argue, this is the fixed point of the universe here. It's not going anywhere. Which is not to say that there wasn't an Unearthed Arcana article in the very early days of 5th edition with a non-spellcasting ranger, and there haven't been multiple articles of ranger revisions along the way to offer some alternate view of the class that just digs into its identity crisis in a different way, because it's stealthy and light armored, but it's not a rogue. It is tough like a fighter, but doesn't have the AC to back that up. They're going to be burning through hit points very quickly, but not the way a barbarian does. They could be the party tank, but they can't. But they could. It's especially weird in 5th edition, where they only started with 2 subclasses, and those are very contentious.
I was going to say they weren't people's favorite subclasses either.
Even the people who love them really love them. The people who love Beastmaster really love Beastmaster. Beastmaster is just very much about there are right choices and wrong choices, and that kind of system mastery in decision making is in itself contrary to the design ethos of 5th. So not great. And then sorry, I need to cough again. The decisions you make in Hunter are interesting at first, and then they kind of taper weirdly. I don't know. It isn't that it's bad. It's that it is all built on a sort of lower point in the Gonzo scale than the other classes, and that's going to cause tonal dissonance.
Fair enough.
But
so if you want to hear, read a whole history of this, Brandes has done that. If you had any questions about Brandes's chops as far as knowledge base goes on this, you can talk about this literally for hours on end, and I know this for a fact. And also, the good thing is, because he can talk about it for hours on end, he can write about it for days on end, and has. Yep. And so again, I highly recommend checking out his work on his blog or Tribality or anywhere else.
Just the history of the classes, easily hundreds of thousands of words.
Yeah. It's he literally covers every class. You admit in there, I think you skip a couple things right here and there, just because you're like, I could talk about this, but I'm going to glance over it because of relevance.
And I haven't actually finished the series. I still have to do Wizard and Cleric and Barbarian and Sorcerer and multiclassing. That might be it. I'm getting pretty close though.
Quit slacking.
I know, right?
I was about to say you did all the good classes, but then you said you haven't done Sorcerer yet, so I guess you still won last.
I'll be a Wizard fan until the day I die.
Sure. Yeah. Kind of for taste. I didn't understand. One of my questions for a lot of folks is, what's your favorite tabletop system? But I guess we know what it is. But please, maybe tell us what your close second is.
So I have 2 systems that are always jockeying for second place, right? For me, those are Over the Edge. I don't care which edition. I love both of the editions I've played. There are actually 3 editions of Over the Edge. I've played 2 of them. The second edition, which came out in '92, and then the 25th anniversary edition, which came out in 2017. I think it actually reached my house in hardcover in 2018. I love this game so much. It is conspiracy weirdness set in the modern day, and it has always been ultra rules light. The 25th anniversary found a way to be even more ultra rules light than its predecessors. That's saying something.
Okay.
And I can run conspiracy thrillers in this all day long, and I just love it.
And
then the other is Mage the Awakening.
Okay. Yeah. Okay,
I've run a couple of Awakening Chronicles that have just been a really good time. I love the like still pretty modern day conspiracy weirdness, but here it's more esoteric conspiracy um, and occultism, and it's really really fun. Um, I'm still trying to get my head around the second edition of Awakening. It is very high crunch compared to the already pretty high crunch first edition, and it kind of makes my eyes bleed. But I want to understand it because I want to get to run Mage again. And there were problems with first that I think they're trying to address, and I appreciate that. But I'm just a huge fan of both of those. There are other systems I like also,
Sure.
but those three are kind of my my trifecta.
Okay. And what about when it comes to video games? What are you playing?
So
Yeah, I'll let you,
so
that's a big one, but okay, just
yeah.
like what maybe I figure what are you playing right now, and what's your go-to fallback if you like, if you gotta be trapped on an island, how to play a game again or something or whatever. Yeah.
All right. So if I were going to be stuck with one game for an unsteadily large amount of time, um, well, I mean, I might actually finish a playthrough of Planescape Torment if I were trapped on an island for a long time. Um, I love games like Hollow Knight. Like just give me a Metroidvania, and I'll be happy for a long, long time.
Sure. I like Metroidvanias myself. Yeah.
And then you've got your Dark Souls that is the very high difficulty, not 2D Metroidvania, right?
Yeah.
But like the similarities between Hollow Knight and Dark Souls sort of explain themselves. One is 2D, the other isn't. That's most of it. And right now I'm also playing Dead Cells, which is a
how is that?
It's sort of blending roguelite and Souls-like in an interesting way, and that's pretty great. It doesn't become Metroidvania because exploring doesn't like stay fixed. It's a roguelite, but it's really good. The action is fast paced and fluid, and that feels very good. The aesthetics are very strong, so do recommend.
Nice, very cool.
And then also things like Slay the Spire and Monster Train. Those roguelike deck builders. Those are really my deal. I'm way into those. But then you've got things like Pillars of Eternity. I love Pillars of Eternity. That old school, like the line that runs straight through Planescape Torment and Baldur's Gate and Icewind Dale through Pillars of Eternity. Like, yeah, of course I love that. That strong writing and decision making, dungeon crawling. That's absolutely my deal.
Cool.
No surprise there. It's
not at all.
Very D&D inflected.
Of course. So another question I like to ask folks is how do you find your Zen? Like, how do you find the calm in your life? I know you're busy writing. You have a heavy work life, but you have a family life too, right? You have a wife. You mentioned. I know you have kids. So like, how do you find some Zen, especially after a year like 2020? Where there wasn't a lot of escaping that. So how do you escape into your own your own Zen?
Well, so it's interesting you ask me that right now because it's something I've been struggling with a lot lately. But we went on a few days of vacation to go see my wife's parents, and then my parents kept our boys for a few days. My wife's dad is still recovering from COVID, and so they just really needed some extra support from us. And we went down there for several days. And while we were down there, I got the sinus infection that's causing the cough you've been hearing all day. But also, we watched the movie About Time. With Donald Gleason and Rachel McAdams, and it really struck me just the right way. I had my first conversation with a therapist. I'm going to therapy for the first time.
Okay.
And then we also finished our like as soon as we got back, we finished our series run of The Good Place, something
Yeah.
like our third series run, and those three things, two media experiences and a really good conversation, really recentered me
That's
in
awesome.
in an important way, and helped me to take a break from some of the things in in my life, and especially in my creative work, that really are like, otherwise I can't let go. Um, like I really struggle when I complete a creative project not to try to keep solving problems better and think about how I could do it better next time, or I came so close to getting it right.
Sure.
And
That's being a game designer, but also a
I mean, it
particular
is
set of being a certain mental state of game designer. Not all game designers are like that,
right.
but I understand it's a common
Well,
trait.
right, and like
Fixing
in
problems.
tabletop gaming and in video gaming, you can at least release a new edition. But in a performance art like a live action role playing game, I can't ever do it again
Sure.
because it was just that time and moment. There's no way. No amount of dedication actually lets me fix that thing.
That we know
But
of yet.
right. But emotionally I can't let go of that.
Sure.
But About Time is a movie about like acceptance and releasing regrets. And so that was very meaningful to me at the time.
Yeah, I get it.
And so I've actually, like, after being in some kind of rocky places emotionally for honestly the past year and change, I'm actually doing great right now. I mean,
Happy
physically
to
I'm
hear that.
still a dang mess, but emotionally I'm better than I've been in a while.
That's awesome to hear. I'm really happy for you, man. That's really good.
Yeah.
Excellent. So I'm going to switch to a not so serious question after that very serious answer and important. But so what do you? But I am really glad to hear that you're doing better after I think it's rocky year for everyone, and I
Oh,
think
for sure,
everyone's
for sure.
trying to come out of it the best way they
And
can.
and like
So yeah.
my difficulties aren't greater than anyone else's. I would never mean to imply that.
No, I
Right.
didn't think you did at all. So don't worry about that. Again, everyone is doing the best they can with the life that they've got and the cards that they're dealt with, right? And so we just all need to be supportive of each other in that manner for 100% for that.
For sure.
And so I was going to ask you what do you put on your hot dog actually next to lighten the mood, but you know.
So usually uh, mustard, ketchup and mustard, or just sriracha.
Ooh, sriracha. Okay.
Yeah, it's not bad. It's not bad.
That
But I
sounds
do love a
good.
good chili dog too. You know.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. The ketchup thing still keeps confusing the hell out of me, but at least you mix it with mustard still. Mustard still.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fair enough. Fair enough. The people who did not have the good fortune of being born on the planet of D&D and maybe haven't had the years of immersion in Dungeons and Dragons, but loves tabletop, loves D&D, are really into it nowadays. They want to, they're looking to the kind of like either get started as a writer, do things in the space, do what you do, but maybe, obviously, I think a lot of my guests prove that it's not overnight, right? It's a lot of it's dedication.
Oh, yeah.
But if they want to get started, what would you tell a young Brandes if he was, just coming about the days? Like, what would you recommend to someone just getting started into the D&D or tabletop role playing community or gaming community in general? Like, how would they get started? Where would you recommend they start?
So okay, in some ways it's the best time we've ever had to get started, and in some ways there's some things that we've lost a little bit. Like blogging now isn't where it was. There was a golden age of gaming blogging that sort of sparked off in 2008-ish, and ran through about 2013. A lot of gaming blogs have closed their doors, though we're still kicking pretty hard over at Tribality. So I'm not really going to say go start a gaming blog. If that's your passion, then God bless you. But what you do have now that we didn't have in any of that time is the DMs Guild.
Okay.
The open gaming license that will help you publish on Drive-Thru RPG or itch.io or whatever, that's great. That's wonderful. It's constraining in some ways, and it can be much harder to drag your reading audience to just Drive-Thru or itch.io to buy your product. Though of course you can do free or pay what you want if that's where you are with it. I don't recommend it. I do recommend charging a flat fee for your work, even if you're a beginner. I'm very serious about this.
Okay.
But I want to be very explicit about what the options are.
Sure.
I think it's important. So the DMs Guild, you're getting a smaller cut of your retail price, but since you have no manufacturing cost per unit, the odds are pretty good that you'll sell 2 to 3 times as much, just because the DMs Guild community is pretty good at driving audience to product. That's been my experience. Obviously, I can't speak to everyone's experience.
Sure.
I've been doing my best to build an audience through blogging and writing on the Bird site for a long time now. And so if I look like an overnight success, it's because it's taken me, 11 years.
Exactly. Exactly. Very
Right.
Very few people, even if they don't want to attribute all the hard work they did earlier, it still takes time to build up the skills, the reputation, the exposure, the everything that's there.
And I've been incredibly lucky in my friendships. I've had friends who have done me huge favors in, hey, I've got more work in this thing than I can handle. Can you come split this with me? I'll put you in contact with this publisher who'll have more work for you in the future. That's how I started writing for Write Publishing. So I started working for Tribality, thanks to a man named Rich Howard, a very dear friend of mine. Working for Write Publishing is how I met Dan Dillon, who now works for Wizards of the Coast. And so he talks to people who need a third-party developer, and it's obviously not work he can legally take on. That's not how Wizards of the Coast works. Sure. But he saw that I'm going to get my work done. I'm going to do it to as high a standard of quality as my capacity allows, and so he can feel good about giving my name to other people. Right.
So would you say networking and not being a bad person, being a generally likable person would be a good tip for people starting off in the perhaps don't piss off a lot of people in the community, because it's a small community. It's a growing community, but it's a small community still.
Well, the actual DMs Guild creative community is still real tiny.
Yeah,
is real tiny for people who get past about 1 or 2 products. So it's absolutely network and be a decent human. Say what you're going to do and do what you say. That kind of just honesty is very crucial. You need people to trust you. You need them to trust that you're going to get done what you say you're going to get done when you say you're going to do it.
Yeah, it's good work ethic, right? And being a freelancer, I think it's a tough step. So if you've never been a freelancer, it's definitely a different setup. Consulting's different, very different than a 9 to 5 per se, and you have to have a very strong work ethic on your own to kind of deliver and meet deadlines and things like that. And even though you have a lot of freedom.
And the one thing about the guild is that you're working for yourself. Right?
Exactly.
There's no one who's going to come
Hold
scold
to
you
it.
for
Yeah.
not getting the thing done unless you're part of a collaborative project.
Mhm.
If you're the boss, then like that thing doesn't get released until you finish it, and you've got to live with whatever you put in it.
Yeah.
So that's a big deal. It's really important.
It is. I agree. Any other advice?
Like my intro to writing in games and all of this is now 15 years in the rearview mirror. Maybe
Mhm.
actually a little bit more, because it was January of 2005 when I started working on Dunning Star Operation Quick Launch with Lee.
Mhm.
So any advice I would give is so dated now as to
Ah.
not be super helpful.
I wouldn't even. Well, I would. I disagree, but that's fair. If I think the advice you're giving right there is good. But
I don't think it's repeatable in that way, is what I'm trying to say.
sure. But I mean, like in essence, like if you know folks that are working on stuff and you're interested, let people know, right?
Oh, for sure, for sure.
And then get involved. And then I know you're talking about like professional tabletop, but you mentioned briefly LARPing and stuff like that, right? I
Yep.
mean, there's other ways to write. I mean, there's lots of other
Oh,
games
for
out there.
sure.
There's more than D&D. There's other things that you can write for. Maybe
Yep.
it's a smaller audience, but there's maybe an easier in that
Mhm.
environment than
Yep.
than
I
than others,
definitely know
right?
people who've been very successful in the indie sphere.
Mhm.
It can definitely work. If you can get the foothold of an audience, just some people who will help proselytize for you,
Yep.
and if you have a good grabby pitch, Kickstarter, man.
Yeah. True.
Beginning, middle, and end of the conversation. Like then all you have to do is deliver when you say you're going to deliver, and the audience will come back because they
If you
had to
do
give you
that.
their mail address. Yeah, they had to
If
give
you
you their
do
mailing
that.
addresses. Yeah,
Yeah.
if you deliver, the audience will come back for the second product because you've got their mailing addresses.
Yeah, exactly. You got their mailing addresses, email, mailing, you have a way to contact them again, right? It's a lot of folks will talk about this in other places. Have a mailing list.
Mm-hmm.
Start building a mailing list of your own. Have it on your website. The thing is like Facebook, other platforms can go away and shut down or lock you out, but they can't take your mailing list away from you. So create a mailing list. Oh, look, we got a special guest. I knew we would get one eventually. So, but we're coming through the end anyway, so it's all right. But it's good. It's good to get a special guest in there. But Brandis, maybe tell everybody one more time, and it'll be in the notes, and it'll be elsewhere, all over when we're posting this podcast and this YouTube video. But where can everyone find you? Tell all the places that the world can, if they were looking to learn and read more about fifth edition or any edition and the history of it and so forth. Where do they find Brandes Stoddard on the
Well,
interwebs?
so all of that history.
Oh shit!
Come.
Nope. Start that again. Sorry about that.
No
I clicked
worries.
the wrong button. Ha ha ha.
It's okay.
Brandis, tell us, where can they find you on the interwebs?
Yeah. So all of that history writing is on tribality.com. You can also find my writing on brandesstoddard.com. On Twitter, the Bird site, I'm at Brandes Stoddard. I also have a Patreon that is Brandes Stoddard. There are real benefits to having an unusual name, folks. I'm on Facebook and MeWe, but I don't do as
That'd be
much
really weird.
gaming writing there. We're just reposting.
Yeah, I think you can just catch it. Most of the stuff goes up on the Bird site, as you said.
Yep.
Check him out at his personal blog. Become a Patreon. Tell me a little bit about that. In Brandon's Patreon support is he's not asking a lot actually, folks, and you get the goods earlier. So maybe talk a little bit about that real fast before we.
So yeah, my Patreon is just kicking me a few bucks to support writing that's going to be free anyway. Nothing is exclusive. It's just 3 days early.
Yeah.
For that's what you get for $1. For $5, you get to see some works in progress that I haven't turned into completed works yet.
And they're fun. They're good reads. They're really good reads.
I've been pretty consistent about 2 releases per month. You also get my DM's Guild releases for free as a member of my Patreon. And then we also had Tribality had a PDF release that was just part of the Tribality Patreon, but we also released it through my Patreon.
Awesome. Very cool.
So,
yeah. Well, thank you so much, Brandes. Really appreciate you being on here today and taking the time and giving us a brief history lesson of some D&D there, and your at least your history too, which is not quite as extensive, but almost as extensive as D&D, it seems. So,
I don't go back to 1974, but brother, it's been a delight to talk to you. I definitely have enjoyed getting to play some tabletop games with you again online during this pandemic. It's been wonderful, and
it's always good times. I'm a big fan of it myself too.
I hope that I will see you stateside again sometime in the future.
Yeah, that might be 2022. But we'll see. We'll see how
we'll
see how the borders lighten up in a bit, or my immunity.
Yeah, man.
Anyway, cool. Thanks again so much. Awesome. That's this week's episode of Press Start Leadership Podcast. As always, thanks for being awesome. And if you haven't yet, make sure to give us a follow. Till next time. If you haven't downloaded my free ebook, 5 Heroic Leadership Skills, click on the link in the description. Tune in next week for your next episode of Press Start Leadership Podcast. Thank you. Oh, hi there. The episode's over, but thanks for sticking around till the end. If you're on the quest to elevate your team's leadership, production, or game design capabilities, I'm here to assist. Leveraging extensive experience and a strategic approach, I offer personalized audits, bespoke workshops, and leadership retreat facilitation to drive your team toward excellence. My commitment is to provide efficient, reliable, and proven support, ensuring you have the tools and insights needed to thrive. Ready to unlock your team's full potential and achieve unparalleled success? Don't hesitate to press start on your journey to transformation today. Feel free to reach out directly to discuss how we can tailor a solution to meet your unique needs and goals. Let's connect and take your team's performance to the next level.